We are about to witness one of the greatest events in human history. The world as we know it is crumbling before our very eyes, and the majority of the world population is not aware of it. Power structures that have been in place for thousands of years are taken down as we speak. Soon we'll be shown evidence of an elite plan, so evil, so all-encompassing, that people will be shocked to the core. This documentary was made to help you deal with what's coming. What do we have for now? Donald Trump as President of the US. And then, out of nowhere, arose the enigma of Q. Q is not a cult, as suggested by opponents. After all, it tells us not what to think or what to do. It merely gives us questions, clues and riddles. We need to do the research in order to find the answers. And that is how we discover the truth. Doesn't that make you wonder who Walt Disney really was? Innocence is sexier than you think? And what about this clothing store called Sweet and Sexy Kids? What the hell is sexy about kids? Well, I guess we're still living in the dark ages. All of the satanic cults are connected, worldwide. People at the highest level are only at the highest level because they participate. And once you're in for life, through blackmail with pictures and video footage taken in secret. And some don't even need blackmail, they simply thrive on the pain and suffering of others. Now, what happens when you try to make any of this public? Either your TV career ends right there and then, or you get a heart attack, or your plane crashes, or you end up dead in a hotel room. Or you are found with a bullet in your back, or you commit suicide. But in order to understand and process the quantum leap that we as humanity are about to take, you must understand the reality, the timeline if you wish, that we as a species were placed in. And believe me, you don't have a clue just yet.
Sup Sobers. You call yourself a truther, and you haven't even seen Fall of the Cabal? Fuck's sake. I'm sure most of you guys have seen it because, well, you're here. But if you haven't seen it, it's probably one of the most exhaustive documentary series that covers pretty much everything that we as truthers seem to talk about. If you want to get the rundown on pretty much where things started and where things are headed and everything in between, then Fall of the Cabal is what you need to be watching. Now, I just recently discovered that you don't have to go to the website and watch them individually in their unorganized, players on there. You can actually just watch them here on YouTube. They've got all the parts on here. If you can't find them on here, if they get deleted, then go to BitChute, check them out on there. Parts 1 through 10 of the original Fall of the Cabal series really dive into tons of different conspiracies and how they're all related and how things all connect at the top. But I'd say more than anything, the overarching theme of the initial series is kind of an exploration into the Q movement. And if you guys aren't familiar with QAnon, then, you'll get a little bit of that here. This isn't a QAnon video per se, but the whole series really focuses in on Trump draining the swamp, playing 4D chess, really doing all of these things behind the scenes, acting as the leader of this secret military organization that is behind the scenes trying to orchestrate a grassroots movement while simultaneously being the man on the inside of the government, helping to drain the swamp of all of these awful people that seem to be holding positions of power. And it seemed like that was happening, with the Epstein files being released and people getting fired left and right, things seeming to clear out. But then out of nowhere, things seem to have flipped. Even MAGA heads are starting to turn the other way. So it makes you wonder, like, what is really going on right now? Is Trump playing 4D chess? Or has this all just been complete nonsense and Trump had nothing to do with Q the entire time? And on top of everything else, there are so many different cryptic riddles / codes that people think Trump is giving in his different speeches and in his different tweets and messages to the public.
In every speech and every tweet, he used codes for the QAnons to pick up on. He used spelling errors such as kafefe instead of coffee, referring to a new act about the saving of all social media posts by the president. The act was introduced 12 days after Trump's tweet. He wrote hamburgers instead of hamburgers, referring to people who are below the devil and who commit acts that even the devil would consider evil. He wrote smoking gun instead of smoking gun, referring to the secret, perverted orgies of John Podesta and friends. Trump's clumsy behavior showed his victory over cabal key players. Every move, every so-called error, every little detail was important. Everything was a communication with the people.
I hear Kofefi.
One of the ones that is pretty high up on the list in terms of proving that he's involved in a high-level chess match is this very pacific quote from Trump saying that it's a high-level game of chess.
Only because people don't understand it's a big chess game at a very high level. It's a very high-level chess, the highest, and I'm dealing with very smart players.
So you can certainly feel that the QAnon folks are going to lean into that pretty hard. What about the fact that we're literally fighting this war in Iran for the blue and white country? Oh, well, that's also been addressed by Q, with Q post number 916, where it says, "We're saving Israel for last." And I thought it was interesting because it says, "We are saving Israel for last," as in whoever is doing this stuff.
It would have to be JFK Jr., John, as his father used to call him. Loved and trusted by the entire nation, mourned by every American citizen. Too bad he is no longer amongst us. Or is he? This is an aerial photograph of JFK's memorial. That's right, it's a Q. Remember this code? It was engraved in the ship bell on JFK's boat. Where we go one, we go all. JFK was murdered because he wanted to expose and get rid of the cabal. He intended to start with the CIA, just like Donald Trump. He too knew that the CIA had turned into an uncontrollable monster that no president or government could restrain, but he had no idea what he was up against. JFK was assassinated. Nobody will ever forget these pictures. John saluting at his father's funeral. The entire nation mourned. Junior grew up to be a lawyer. He swore he would avenge his father and take his killers to court, even if he had to bring down the government, as he put it. He ran for the New York Senate seat in 1999, as did Hillary Clinton. John would have won by miles. He was born to be the next president of the US. But it wasn't meant to be. On July 16, 1999, his plane crashed into the ocean. There were no survivors. All three on board, John, his wife Carolyn, and her sister Lauren, died upon impact. Their bodies were retrieved and cremated. The remains were kept in Tiffany blue boxes before they were scattered at sea. Remember when Donald and Melania Trump were welcomed by the Obamas at the White House on day one of Trump's presidency? Remember the gift Melania gave to Michelle? The Tiffany blue box? What does that remind you of? Remember the Tiffany blue coat Melania was wearing? So many references to JFK Sr. and Jr. If John is alive, would he show himself to the public from time to time? Disguised, of course, yet clear enough for the Anons to see? Meet Vincent Fusca. Presented to the public as a Trump enthusiast and volunteer at the Trump rallies. This I find interesting. His nose changes. Sometimes it's bigger than John's, sometimes it's not. But why would a Trump fan do such a thing? Then there's the mystery lady in the audience, always close to Fusca. My, doesn't that big smile look familiar? What about Lauren, Carolyn's sister? The two were very close. Maybe Carolyn didn't want to disappear without her? Maybe she was informed on the plan? And maybe she decided to join them and stay low as well? Could this be Carolyn, presented as Fusca's colleague at the rallies? When Q was asked, is JFK Jr. alive? The answer was no. But when Senior dies, Junior no longer is Junior. The question should have been, is JFK alive?
So Q was always super cryptic, but this is another instance where Q folks all say this is just 5D chess and he's saving Israel for last. And keeping in mind that there's been a lot of Q theories that have been proven correct very recently. For the QAnon movement to think that they're still headed down the same path makes total sense. And just to give you a taste of what Fall of the Cabal actually covers and talks about, it starts from the ancient Khazarian Empire and moves all the way up through present day. And it covers every single thing in between, it feels like. The Rothschild family, the Crusades, the Jesuits, Freemasons, and the Knights Templar, all of them being in one web for dominance and control. The Illuminati, the founders of the Illuminati, the French Revolution and Napoleon, World War I, Hitler being a Jesuit puppet, the Nazi SS, Israel pre-World War II setup, where they established the state of Israel with the Rothschild family using the Balfour Declaration. This was in 1917. Then they go through the Protocols of Zion, which is kind of like a step-by-step process of the things that they need to do to accomplish their Zionist goals. They also discuss the UN being an evil organization that was essentially just set up like a New World Order, one world government control mechanism that oversees the entirety of the world. And they also talk about COVID, vaccines, fake meat, depopulation.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
They have a huge focus on Bill Gates, not only his vaccine and pandemic stuff, but also his ties with Epstein and adrenochrome. They talk about wars, famine, chemtrails, 5G, and essentially what the entire series boils down to is it talks about all of these different theories, all these different truths that stem from the Khazarian Empire. And it's kind of interesting to see it all traced back that far, to see where it all really comes from and how we got to where we are now. The entire series begins with Fall of the Cabal, 10 parts. Then it goes into the sequel to the Fall of the Cabal, which is actually 28 parts. Significantly longer, but phenomenal. Just, it goes through everything. And then there's another 4-part conclusion to the Fall of the Cabal, and that would make it a total of 42 episodes. Just massive. All covering very interesting truther topics. The amazing heroes behind this series are Janet Ossebaard and Cyntha Koeter. They are both Dutch from the Netherlands. I would say that they put together probably the most comprehensive series on the truther movement that I've found anywhere. And they did something that was not only monumental for the truther movement, the Q movement, but also something extremely risky. Nobody was talking about this stuff at the time, and certainly not on the level that they were. The entire series was released for free and is still free for you to view which I think is just crazy. They could have charged as much as they wanted for this series and probably would have made a lot of money on it. But they chose to release it for free because they just cared that much about getting the truth out, and they cared that much about sharing the information that they had found through years and years of research. For them to do it all for free just shows that I think their intentions had to be pure. They weren't trying to do this to dupe people or make money or anything, simply to spread the truth. And as I dug further and further into Janet and Cyntha's story, the eerie similarities between two stories that I've already covered on this channel began to feel overwhelming. First of all, the Avicii story, because of how limited the information is on this case. In Sweden, they lock up death records and autopsy reports, police records with the most intense locks and keys you could ever imagine. They don't release that information at all, ever. I don't even think they release it to the family unless they directly request it. Just like with Avicii, there is basically no information related to what happened in this case. The other case it reminds me of is the Isaac Kappy case, because both of them were involved in the Q movement. Both of them were involved in exposing the truth. They both talked about a lot of the same people, celebrities, and on top of everything else, the amount of information that I could find that was either wiped or scrubbed from the internet was vast. There was so much of it. As I dug into what happened to Janet Ossebaard, I realized that this is the exact same playbook that the Cabal uses every single time. And just like Isaac Kappy, in her final days, Janet Ossebaard was acting extremely erratic, not quite herself, just doing things that were really strange. And this is the reason that people question whether or not Isaac Kappy and Janet Ossebaard truly chose to pass themselves away.
Let's go. Alcohol.
All right, welcome back to Sobering Stories with me, DJ Petrovsky. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for giving me a shot. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you end up liking what we got going on here. That way you'll see when I post videos, which is every Friday. If you're a returning subscriber, Sup Sobers. A few weeks ago, I had mentioned that my mother-in-law gave me a really great idea. Instead of hosting some sort of product or just talking about a sponsor, she said I should have a real-life story of someone who got sober, a sobering story. And I thought this was an amazing idea. I've finally gotten a couple in my inbox, and I wanted to share one with you. This story is about a super inspiring sober named Derek. Derek grew up in a household that didn't have any alcohol in it because his maternal grandfather was a pretty big alcoholic. He died at the age of 58 years old, and it wasn't until his funeral that Derek actually got to meet his grandfather. Not the best place to meet, for sure. But because of this, his parents didn't allow alcohol in their house at all. Derek didn't even try alcohol until he was 18 years old on a school trip, and he said he hated it. But fast forward to 2012, he's married with his first child. His debut book, Who Killed Betsy, about the cold case of Betsy Ardsma, just dropped and is doing really well. But then he picks up this new teaching job in Baltimore. Just being in that environment, seeing kids failing on a regular basis, it really just drove him to the bottle. He started out small, just drinking beers, but that eventually escalated to drinking 200 ml, 350 ml bottles of 100 proof vodka pretty much every night. He started drinking beers just so his wife would know that he was drinking something, but it would make it impossible for her to know just how drunk he was. And I can relate to that because I would drink beers or ciders so that I smelled like alcohol or had a reason to smell like alcohol, but then I had a secret bottle that I would hit whenever I wanted to. He continued this path for 4 years. It wasn't until he was sitting at his desk one day in 2016 that he realized that if he kept going down this path, his grandfather died at the age of 58, and he felt like the same thing was going to happen to him if he didn't stop. So he tried to quit cold turkey, which is what most of us would try to do. But he realized very quickly that alcohol is one of those drugs that if you quit cold turkey, it can kill you if your addiction's bad enough. In fact, I have a friend whose dad died exactly from that reason. He had to quit drinking for a routine surgery, and he literally died on the operating table because of it. In Derek's situation, he ended up having a stroke that was a 21 on a 30 scale. It left him partially blind and without the ability to use his right arm. In fact, doctors and nurses were telling him that he would probably never walk or talk again because of the issues that he had with the stroke. In fact, doctors and nurses said that he probably shouldn't even be here. But fast forward 10 years later, Derek's made a full recovery. He is walking and talking. He really only lost slight vision in one of his eyes. But besides that, he's been healthy and clean. He's finished 2 more books, and he's got a 4th one on the way. It's 99% done. But he says it's such a hot, controversial topic, even still 40 years later. There's a whole other copy given to a friend of his. So if anything happens to him, natural or unnatural, he's supposed to release the book anyways. It's got me real curious. Definitely go check him out on Amazon. You can get all of his books on there. But I really appreciate you sharing your sobering story with us, Derek. It's truly inspiring to know that when you do get sober, you can do truly amazing things. You can find yourself again. And then you realize that your addiction was the one thing holding you back from achieving your true potential. Derek, you're truly an inspiration. You're an OG in the game, 10 years strong. That's freaking sick. And I really appreciate you not only sharing your story with me, but also with our audience. And hopefully there's someone out there that gained a little bit of inspiration from this story, just like I did. Derek sent me a YouTube link with an interview where he talks about his first book. It was super interesting to listen to, so I think you guys should go check it out. I put a link in the card above me and in the description as well. But go check it out, show Derek some love, and if you need help, reach out to him. If you have a sobering story you want to share, I'd say the best ways to contact me are through Instagram, but if it doesn't let you message me or whatever on there, then go ahead and shoot me an email. I'm getting better at checking my emails, so that might honestly be the best place for it. And of course, I'm getting a lot of stories in, so I can't cover them all quickly, so just be patient with me, and I'll get to it. Now, if you've seen Fall of the Cabal, you'll know that Janet Ossebaard is the voice of the whole series. She's got such a nice, calm, soothing voice, and it's unmistakable when you hear it.
Censorship is one of the greatest dangers to a democracy and to freedom of speech. 3 more major sponsors of Hillary Clinton are Google, Twitter, and Facebook. Google and its YouTube are highly active in the field of censorship, just like Twitter and Facebook.
When it comes to things that we actually do know about Janet, it's pretty minimal. In fact, I don't even know the specific date she was born. I just know she was born in Deventer, Netherlands in 1966. She went to Groningen University, where she studied English and literature, and when she graduated at the age of 24 in 1990, she started a business with another guy named Ossebaard and Jansen. Essentially, they would just go into different corporate businesses and run those training programs or training exercises, doing the team building stuff that everybody loves so much. And they would do this for 10 years. She would eventually break off and do her own little freelance side work. But in 1994, she was exposed to something that changed her life forever. She was shown her very first crop circle. And apparently, Deventer is a really, really big hotspot for crop circles. I didn't know that. But man, some of the crop circles that she's taken pictures of, seen, studied, they're amazing. They're crazy. They're so freaking cool. And I had no idea that she was a ufologist. Had no idea. But she would slowly become more and more invested in the UFO studies to the point where in the year 2000, she would leave the business entirely. She would stop doing her freelance work and she would focus entirely on UFO and crop circle research. Janet's partner with their consulting business was Bert Jansen, and he was also her partner in crime when it came to crop circles. He helped her work on research and books and all the things that she was doing. They even worked on a documentary together about it.
My name is Janet Ossebaard. I'm from the Netherlands, and I have been a full-time crop circle researcher now for about 13 years. Before that, I was a communication consultant for business people. And the whole communication, as such, is something that is highly represented in the crop circles, but it's a communication with a capital C. And one of my one of my most spectacular moments over the last 13 years was a close encounter with a ball of light, and I've had several now. One of them, or two actually of them, appeared right in front of my car. I was driving the car at Avebury here, really close by, Avebury Stone Avenue, and this beautiful milky white ball of light appeared over a crop field, flew right in front of my car, and I just could not believe my eyes. I'd seen them before, but never so up close. And then I decided, okay, something's happening here. There's obviously a very, very strong presence. I'm going to do a night watch. This was about 11 o'clock at night. I parked my car at Stone Avenue, overlooking a beautiful field where there was no formation yet. And I thought, if anything happens tonight, it's going to be in that field. And around midnight, all of a sudden, this huge red, bright red ball of light appeared. It was really, really big, several meters in diameter. It appeared out of nowhere above that field and hovered over the road behind the stones of the avenue and disappeared over Walker's Hill. And the next morning, when it started to be light, you could see the new formation in that field. And that blew me away.
This documentary is really interesting. I'm going to link it in the description, but gives a little background story on her. Through her research into crop circles, she started looking more into UFOs, extraterrestrial species and beings. She started working on communicating with them, following the whole Dr. Stephen Greer method and using his app, using magnometers to try and actually listen to alien transmissions. She started getting deep into it. Then she realized that these crop circles are communications. They're messages. They have to be some sort of message or sign that they're leaving for us. And everybody that she works with, they go into these crop circles and they meditate and they pray and they just hang out and like just love each other and share stories and just talk, because they say there's just this magnetic positive energy in the circles. And I can only imagine. I would love to go see a crop circle like that. It sounds magical.
Green, and it would probably have freaked me out. But that contact sensation and that state of utter bliss, I of course never forgot. And that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back, because you simply want more. It is so divine, it is so intense and so lovely. It was this wave of unconditional love that washed over me and through me, and it was just spectacular.
But one thing she realized was that it was a communication. As she started looking into different communications and why they'd be communicating with us or how they'd be communicating with us, she started looking into ancient civilizations that talk about extraterrestrials and aliens, and she ended up landing on the Sumerians. She started looking into where these symbols might have come from or other examples of these same symbols, and she noticed that there were three major ancient civilizations that all had cuneiform or hieroglyphics or something along those lines that matched these same symbols she was finding in these fields. So either they were seeing the same things being made, possibly by the same creatures or beings, or they were in communication with these same creatures or beings, and these symbols were sacred for some reason, and they were still being left thousands of years later in these fields. And this was consistent between the Sumerians, the Mayans, and the Egyptians. Janet would continue investigating and doing lectures on crop circles. She was so fascinated by deciphering the communication that was going on here. She actually wrote 4 books about crop circles. She was just fully immersed in the community. Then in 2017, something shifted pretty big for her. She got exposed to the Q posts, which are these really weird, cryptic, almost nonsensical posts that seem to have great meaning and are what lead and fuel the whole Q movement. She felt like these posts were so similar to the crop circles because they were cryptic messages that really had to be deciphered. You had to do some research to really look into what things meant. And she was yet again just fully fascinated by Q, the posts, the movement, what was being said and talked about. And it got to a point where she felt like she had to do something, say something. She had to get involved somehow.
There's 2 groups in life, in the world. that have no voice, and that's the animals and the children. And I am their voice. I want to be their voice. And I don't care if I can save each and every one of them, but each and every one that I did save because of my actions, that will mean the whole world to them. That will change their whole life and their whole world.
So she tried really hard to try and figure out who Q actually was. She thinks it's a military secretive operation, and she's under the belief that Trump is the leader of this operation, just like most of the folks in the Q movement.
Do you have an idea or a thought process on is Q a person? Is Q a being? Is Q God? Is Q like JFK Jr.? Is it a team of people? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I believe that Q is a team.
Okay.
It's not just one person. It can be. Some people say, oh, Q is Quetzalcoatl. I don't believe that. Maybe he's part of it. I don't know. It would be nice. But Q, as far as I'm concerned, is a group of high intel people. And I believe Donald Trump is part of it. He is a key a person in it. He probably is referred to in the post as Q+.
Right.
I believe General Flynn is in it, Admiral Rogers, some very high-ranked officials from the Army, Intel. And I believe that some are not from this planet.
And then in 2018, Janet was giving a lecture on crop circles, and she had spotted Cyntha Koeter in the crowd, and the two of them hit it off. They started chatting, they became close friends, they started hanging out more and more. Eventually, Janet would ask some prying questions about her past, and they would start to open up some of her childhood wounds, because Cyntha was abused ritually as a child by her own father for many, many years. And this left her completely scarred. But on top of that, he would loan her out to his friends or people that were close. Very similar situation to the things that we hear them talking about in Fall of the Cabal.
One of the men, I think it's from the department who oversees the school. Well, he loaned me out to that man, and I have memories of that man, a lot of memories of it. I also remember a dentist and a master from my own school where I was as a child. So at least a teacher, yeah, at least 3 people I know. I remember that I once tried to tell it to someone in my family, and that almost cost me my life. That's the most horrible memory I have, that my father took me to his school and he slammed me to a cupboard. It almost broke my ribs. I still feel pain there, and I know now where it comes from. He then raped me and choked me, and I nearly died. And the results are that I still can't swallow properly. I thought things like that were normal, but when you have the memories, you start to see, okay, it's not normal that you swallow like this.
But because she was able to open up all these regressed memories, they were able to become really, really close. They developed such a strong bond with each other that they decided to make it official, and they became partners. Now, Cyntha does have a former husband and 2 daughters with that husband, but it sounds like she's kind of been drifting, doing her own thing for a few years at this point. With these new revelations about her past and Janet's newfound infatuation for the Q posts and Q and just this whole movement, the two of them decide to team up and start working on what they can do to actually help this situation and give back to keep other young children from experiencing the same thing that Cyntha went through. They both begin digging deep, starting to research, very detailed, very in-depth, and Cyntha focuses more on the research aspect, the post-production, and Janet focuses on narration and research, and the two of them together create the 10-part series, Fall of the Cabal. It was so amazingly popular, and it red-pilled so many people, they had to do a follow-up. And of course, there's a lot of pieces that were really left out of the initial docuseries, so it just made sense for them to make a sequel. The sequel, I would say, is a lot more in-depth. It doesn't cover necessarily the same exact stuff, goes from beginning all the way up to the present, and really tracks the entire history of the deep state. The initial series dropped during the peak of COVID And it's fairly ironic that they discuss COVID at length in the series.
It causes shallow, slowed, or temporarily stopped breathing that may lead to permanent brain injury or death. Furthermore, midazolam is dangerous for elderly patients in general. Also for those who don't even have breathing problems. If given at all, it should be done at a very low dosage. A dosage for the elderly should not be greater than 0.5 milligram, max 1 milligram. However, during the outbreak, this policy was changed into the following: a starting dose of 2.5 milligrams and, if necessary, pump it up to 5 or even 10 milligrams. Who on earth changed these policies? The same people who had those thousands of patients removed from hospitals to care homes. The same who advised administering midazolam in the first place. The same who knew damn well what the effects would be. The very same who ordered insane amounts of midazolam at the beginning of 2020. So much so, it had to be imported from France. That's right, a 2-year supply of a killer drug was imported from France. It was all used up by October of that same year. Not as part of the anesthesia during surgery, as was the official explanation. There were no surgeries during these COVID months. They were postponed by the same criminals, guilty of genocide of 26,500 people who died in April 2020 alone in care homes. Those people choked to death. Midazolam side effect, significant depression of respiration, killed them. They suffocated. What was written on their death certificates? Cause of death, COVID-19.
It's safe to say that they probably influenced a ton of people during that time frame on vaccines, the pandemic itself, just what was really going on in the world, and the darkness that actually existed behind the scenes of what was going on. They released the sequel in 2021, and this one took a lot longer to make, but it's also a lot more parts and a lot more in depth. It's 28 episodes, and the episodes go a little bit longer than the initial series did. So they're actually making this series all the way through 2023. Both being from the Netherlands, Janet and Cyntha decided to leave the Netherlands because they decided it was just too much of a police state, especially considering what happened in their unthinkable but true story they tell on Janet's YouTube page about Joost Neville. He was in a very similar position as Janet and Cyntha were. He was truthing and spreading the message, and he was platforming himself with other content creators online until one day he was arrested with no notice, no subpoena, no nothing. He was taken to court and then extradited back to his home state, which was the Netherlands. He was left in prison for quite a while, awaiting his whole trial to even find out what he was being charged with in the first place. Slander, defamation, spreading lies, all this stuff. And at the end of everything, they said that they would release him, but he would have to agree to never talk about any of the things he was talking about ever again. He'd have to completely leave behind his whole body of work, his message, the truth. He'd have to just walk away. And if he didn't, then they would bring the full force of the law against him. Truth can be a dangerous game, y'all. And Janet and Cyntha knew that better than anyone.
We are not allowed to go on the streets anymore with more than 3 people, I think 3 or 4. And they're going to change it probably from next Monday on to 2. 2 people. It's insane. It is worse now than it was in 1938, 39 when the war broke out.
Which is why they started living nomadically, living out of their camper van. But you can imagine Fall of the Cabal brought quite a bit of heat into their lives, and they were a bit scared, honestly. So starting in late 2020, they decided to go mobile, and they basically lived on the run. They were moving place to place, never staying in one place for too long. They didn't really have any technology besides computers that were off the grid. They didn't have cell phones. They really lived as quiet and hidden as they possibly could, which is probably one of the main reasons I couldn't find any information about either one of them for this video. But living the van life, constantly traveling, looking over your shoulder in fear that the work that you've put out, the eyes that you've opened up, and the people that you've called out might have severe consequences. I'm sure that's not an easy life to live. And on top of everything else, we have no way to verify this, but Cyntha says that Janet had amazingly serious depression to the point where she hated life. That's her own words. She hated life. Apparently, it was so bad that Janet was on some sort of medication, taking something, and we're not even really sure if it was for the depression. Maybe she was taking pain medication. Maybe she had some sort of anti-anxiety. We really don't know. It could have been anything. We just know that she was taking some sort of medication. And the reason we know that is because on November 16th, she left a note saying that she was going to go pass herself away. She was going to leave. She wanted to be left alone. She wanted Cyntha to respect her wishes. There was likely some message for her family in there. She was going to take the van, go off by herself, and pass herself away. After finding this note, Cyntha says that she looked for a little while, but ultimately decided the best thing for her to do would be to respect Janet's wishes and let her go off and do her thing. She also says that she was living between hope and despair for a total of 5 weeks. Why 5 weeks? Well, because it's not until December 22nd that Janet's body is actually found in her camper van on some guy's private property. Now, this landowner is located near Lund, Sweden, so quite a ways away from the Netherlands, and we're not really sure where her and Cyntha were staying. We're not sure how far away from their campsite or whatever she actually was. And my other question was, where were they staying that Cyntha wasn't in the van when she decided to leave and go do this? Regardless, she took off, she parks on this guy's property, and the next day, on November 17th, he's already calling police saying, hey, there's a van parked on my property. Can you guys come help me out? And then they never show up. 2 weeks later, he calls again. Hey, still a van here, you guys. Would love if you could come take care of it. They say, all right. They don't show up. It's not until 5 weeks after Janet's disappeared that her family finally puts in a missing persons report. Yes, 5 weeks. Cyntha didn't feel like it was something she should do because she wanted to respect Janet's wishes, whatever that means. After putting in an official missing persons report and then getting another phone call 5 weeks later from this same landowner, they link the two together and realize, oh, okay, actually, this might be the van that we're looking for. Sure enough, it is. They break the window and they find Janet's body, unfortunately, passed away inside the camper van. It's very quickly ruled a self-passing away. They also very quickly say that it must have been some sort of OD on whatever medication she had. And with it being in Sweden, their laws are extremely strict. They don't let any information out. So we have no way of knowing what these pills were, any pieces of the investigation, no photos. We don't even have any proof that it was actually her. The only thing that we get to prove that it was really her and this did really happen is a really heartfelt message that was released on the Fall of Cabal Telegram. Put it up on the screen. If you want to read the whole thing, then you definitely can read the whole thing, but you're going to have to pause the screen. But anyways, the note itself just says that the conspiracy theories are not welcome. Our lives are not your lives. I don't owe you any information, but she does give the general story of what happened about her leaving this note, driving off, taking these pills, and ending it all. But of course, with the nature of the series that they make and the nature of their work, everybody believes that something else happened. It had to have happened. Something else had to have happened, right? People are saying that maybe Cyntha did something to her, maybe the deep state got to her, maybe the Jesuits ordered a hit on her because, well, she called out the Jesuits pretty hard in her series. But we really don't have any proof one way or the other. And we kind of just have to take Cyntha's word for it. She then releases a video version of this note, basically is what I'd call it. But it's kind of a heartfelt message to the fans, letting people know what happened, letting people know to stop talking conspiracies, to stop speculating on what happened to her, basically debunking every conspiracy theory that's going on about it. And she confirms that Janet was struggling with depression, like really badly. She says that she hated life. I don't get that vibe from Janet. And that was like my first trigger, where I started feeling like something was off about this video.
Dear friends from all across the world, I have a deeply sad message to deliver. Janet has been found dead. After a period of 5 weeks in which she was missing, she died of suicide by taking an overdose of medicine on November 16, 2023. Janet has had a lifetime of struggling against severe depressions and death wishes. A few times a year, she would experience a deep emotional episode. This last time was one too much. She was in the process of dealing with her youth issues, which she wrote about in her blogs, and it seemed like a never-ending story to her. She tried everything. She tried to save others, me included. She tried to save the world with creating Fall of the Cabal, but she couldn't save herself. Underneath her smiles and silly jokes, she deeply hated life. For me, she meant the world. We were so aligned, so in tune. We only needed a glance to completely understand each other. We shared the same humor, same silly jokes. We shared the same determination to find the truth and spread it to the world. Janet already made name as a crop circle researcher and author. She really reached the masses with her original 10-part series, The Fall of the Cabal. It was an honor for me to work with her, to share her professionalism, her passion. When we worked together, we worked as one. We had the same ideas about the script, the same ideas about the research. We started with a script of 17 parts for the sequel to The Fall of the Cabal in the summer of 2020. We ended up with 28 parts, and we are only halfway the original script. There is still so much to say, so much to expose, but it will never be the same when the voice behind the series falls away. I will not finish the sequel alone. I will leave it as it is today, with an open end. One day, I might release the rest of the script to the world, but it will be in a different form. The sequel was our co-production, and it will never be the same without Janet. This doesn't mean Fall of the Cabal will end here. I will continue to fight for the children, to make presentations, to produce DVDs and books, and to fill our Telegram channel with the most important daily truths you don't hear in the news. Janet, we lived together for 5.5 years, 24/7. We were soulmates, best friends, and best co-workers ever. You are the second mother for my children, and the light in our lives. I will miss you more than anything. I'll end this message now with Janet's own words, with love, as always.
It gave me Isaac Cappy final video vibes, if you know what I mean. One of the biggest things that people focus on when it comes to Janet's story is the fact that, just like so many other different stories, she also mentioned that she was not trying to pass herself away at all, ever. And if she did, then we should know that something was afoot. Now, unfortunately, I could not substantiate this claim. I couldn't find any proof anywhere that she actually said this, which was a little frustrating because I thought that that would be a really interesting piece of the puzzle. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, and it very well still could have been said, possibly in some sort of interview or perhaps in some sort of article that I wasn't able to translate. I don't know, but I wasn't able to find it. And it doesn't seem like there's any other proof that she said this out there, at least not from any of the people that I could find that claim that she said this. But I'm not really sure. Does somebody who's planning to pass themselves away talk about growing old and being 80 or 90, looking back on their life and being happy with it? I don't really think so. And she also talks about never stopping this mission until she puts every single one of these child predators behind bars. So, I don't know.
You know, I tend to think in terms of when I'm 80 or 90 or whatever, 60, when I die and I'm on my deathbed, how do I want to look back on my life? How do I want to see myself? Not about others. I don't care what other people think about me is none of my business. It's not relevant. What's relevant is how do I feel about me when it's my time to make the transition. And it's always been very clear to me that I wanted to make a difference. And I want to make it. I've always, since a little child, I wanted to save people, animals. I'm now 54 years old. I can't even walk by a pond without having to save all the insects, because otherwise, if I don't do it, they drown and I can't sleep because they're so horrid and nobody looked after them. Nobody cared. I want to look down on my life when I'm dead and gone, and think that was a really good life. That was a damn good incarnation. I did everything I wanted to do. I'd done more and seen more than most people do in 3 or 4 or 5 incarnations. I've lived to the fullest and I've given it my everything. That's me. I want to give it my everything. And when this is behind me, regardless of the outcome, I want to be able to say, I did my utmost best. I did everything in my power to wake people up, to show them what was really going on. I did everything I could to save the children and save the animals, those without a voice. That's all I want to be able to do. That's my goal in life. And if I succeed, great. If I don't, too bad. But then at least I can say I did everything I could. I gave it all. It is great to have hope. And you must realize, everybody who's listening, please realize there is always hope. Once you lose hope, forget it. You're done with. Never lose hope. Never lose faith. No matter what happens. I so many times I fall on my face. I get back up and I keep on going. There's always hope.
And I want you guys to remember, Cyntha has a previous husband and 2 daughters who very easily could have been threatened. Janet might have been taken out, and maybe they threatened to do something to Cyntha's family, which is why she's now pushing this cover-up story. So I don't know, people are kind of divided on this message. It seems in one aspect she's very genuine and seems like she's, being thoughtful and giving us some answers. And then in another aspect, it seems like she is just doing her best to shut things down real quick. Make sure that conspiracy talk is not talked about. I just don't know what to think about it. Like, if it was me and there was no conspiracy, I would be more vocal than that about it if it kept continuing. And I would also show proof. Like, I would know that the conspiracy community needs to see proof. And so I would do my best to provide proof. But she doesn't do that. She basically just says it's none of your business. And she's right. It's really not any of our business. But come on. You really expect your audience to not question what happened? You can't expect that. I also just don't think that Cyntha's actions match a normal, regular person who's in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship, or even just family. If your friend, family member, partner says that they're going to go pass themselves away, then you would likely try and do something, right? Like, if my partner said that, I would literally search to the ends of the earth to try and find her. Immediately would put in, like, not a missing persons report, but like, there's got to be a report for somebody who is threatening themselves, is a danger to themselves. Kind of like, what was that? We talked about it in a previous episode, those psychiatric holds that they can put you on. I'm sure that you can enact one of those and they can go make sure this person's okay, Baker's Act or whatever. So that's what I think would happen in my situation. And a lot of other people agree. But that's not what Cyntha did. She said, oh, well, she left me this note and that's what she wants to do. So I guess I'll just sit here and let her do what she wants to do. And that to me made no sense. And I'm not even sure if she waited 5 weeks to tell Janet's family or if they just waited 5 weeks to put the missing persons report in, but I would imagine that she waited to tell the family 5 weeks, and as soon as they found out, they immediately put in a missing persons report. Why wouldn't they do it sooner? But 5 weeks? Her body's just sitting there for 5 weeks? I bet that van smelled so bad. But seriously, 5 weeks. Nobody did anything. Like, just think it through. Play the tape all the way through. Okay, I'm not going to go look for her. She's just going to go take care of herself somewhere, and it's just somebody else's problem now. Sorry, somebody else is going to have to deal with it. If they even find her, who knows what's going to happen. But somebody's going to have to stumble upon that body and find this out and figure out what's going on. And Like, it just makes no sense. You really are just going to put that onto other people? You guys travel around the country, so it's not even like you're in an area where people know you, or it makes no sense. 5 weeks. However, that kind of silence, giving a person 5+ weeks to get away, seems like something you do if that person was going into witness protection or trying to completely get off the map because they're in fear for their life. Maybe they're just done doing this whole series. Maybe they're done with this whole endeavor and they just want to walk away. And so this was her way of just walking away, and Cyntha was respecting her wishes to walk away, not necessarily to pass herself away, but just to walk away. That's what I would do if somebody wanted to get out of that situation or was forced into hiding or didn't pass themselves away but had another reason to disappear, if you know what I mean. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like she's covering it up. However, there is a lot of people out there that believe, and I would be lying if I said the thought didn't cross my mind, that Cyntha was actually Janet's handler, and she was really only on board so that she could eventually take Janet out. And very quickly after Fall of the Cabal was finished, the sequel, there's only 4 more episodes that were made after Janet passed away, and that's the conclusion to the Fall of the Cabal. Now, she did come out with this Fall of the Cabal for youth, which I think is amazingly sick. That's the only other new episodes that have come out recently, and they're actively putting those episodes out as I speak. But if she was in fact a handler, then she would be a very easy way for the deep state, the Clintons, the Black Pope of the Jesuit order, the Freemasons, anybody that had a beef with Janet, which could be literally anyone, to come after her and use Cyntha as their way to get to her. There's also a ton of people out there that believe that Q might have saved her. Q might have picked her up. The intel agency has her in some witness protection program because maybe she knows too much. Maybe she knows some secrets that she shouldn't know, and they're keeping her protected to continue this whole 5D chess master plan.
It's a very high level chess, the highest.
I don't know. In fact, nobody knows. The only person that does know is Cyntha, in my opinion. And she doesn't seem very forthcoming, and she seems like she's giving every reason as to why she doesn't need to be forthcoming, which is shady, especially considering the nature of your crowd, of your audience. Like, these people need proof, and you're not going to give it to them. You're just going to fuel the conspiracies even further, even though you're trying to put the conspiracies out. To me, it makes zero sense whatsoever. It's a complete cover-up job. And yet again, we're left with a final video of somebody just like Isaac Cappy that leaves me more confused than anything. And I feel this deep void that I may never fill because of it. You know what I'm saying? Do you have that same void? There's also no mention of what pills she took. And if she was on medication for like depression or anxiety, I wouldn't imagine that those were strong enough to, OD on. I just couldn't imagine they are. You'd have to take the whole bottle maybe. And even then I wouldn't be sure that it would work. So I don't know. I'm just curious what pills she might have taken, what pills she was on. I'm just really curious about the whole situation. And unfortunately, we'll never get answers. My personal hope is that Janet is still out there doing her own thing, researching crop circles, stargazing, watching aliens fly by, contacting aliens. That's my hope and dream for her. I hope she's out there doing her thing. But if she's not, I can totally understand being engulfed in the dark underbelly of society, living in the truther world. It's extremely dark, especially as deep as she was into it. And if she did struggle with depression and anxiety and issues where she wasn't really able to cope with this stuff well, then it would definitely make sense that she passed herself away. But there's just so many things that just don't feel right about the situation. The timeline, the lack of information, the eerie video and message that Cyntha put out, the lack of transparency, and the extreme defensiveness of it's our lives, not yours, leave us alone, this isn't your business, kind of an attitude. It seems aggressive, which seems defensive, which seems like you're hiding something. But I want to know what you guys think. You guys always seem to have really interesting tidbits to add or new rabbit holes to dive into. But go ahead and drop what you think down in the comments. Is she still out there? Or is it a straightforward story? It is what it is. Either way, I miss Janet. She was amazing. the Fall of the Cabal series was hugely instrumental in waking me up to a lot of different things. I've used her in my videos before, and I'm actively still finishing the conclusion because I didn't watch the conclusion before. I only watched the sequel and the original. But yeah, like I said, I'll link all of them in the description if you want to check them out. Other than that, I just look forward to doing this again with you guys next week for another one. But until then, I want you guys to sleep safe. I want you to stay awake. I want you to stay sober. And I want you to watch The Fall of the Cabal. Later, sobers.
And that was a bit of a shock. But now to be called and to be known in my country, everybody now knows my name and my face, and they think I'm very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous.
Let's go.